The boy called a stranger, Appa, and then he hit the floor. My loves, gather close. Imani Brooks drives a rig through the rain on I-70, 34 years old, a black woman with grease on her strong hands, and a dead man's wedding ring hanging from her neck. In the sleeper cab behind her, a 15-year-old boy sleeps. She raised him on diesel and a lullaby she swears she invented herself. They are a family of two, always in the red, and he is the only thing she has left since Marcus. Then a freight run brings her to the CO Group terminal. A tribute video plays on the wall, a dead woman's face. And under it, her lullaby, the same notes, note for note. The boy whispers one word, Appa, father. Then his eyes roll back and he falls. A camera catches the mark behind his ear, a half moon. The recording reaches Seo Kang-jun, the Iron Hand. A black dragon climbs the right side of his neck, its head resting under his ear. He puts on his coat. He leaves. Aigu. Convoys, DNA, a wrench raised in the dark, and a mother who will not let go of the only child she has. But what she does next, none of them saw it coming. Before starting the story, comment down below where you are watching from and what time it is there. If stories of karma, love, and hidden truths move you, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a member and help our channel. The wipers dragged across the glass one more time, and the rain came back faster than they could clear it. Imani Brooks kept both hands on the wheel and her eyes on the two white lines that the headlights pulled out of the dark. I-70 west of Salina, 3 in the morning. Nobody out here but her and the trucks that ran the graveyard freight, spaced far apart, their lights blooming and fading in the mirror like slow breathing. She reached for the thermos without looking, found it by memory, in the cup holder her right hand had known for 11 months. The coffee had gone cold hours ago. She drank it anyway. Behind the driver's seat, past the curtain she kept half drawn, the boy slept. She could hear him. Not snoring, he never snored, just the small, even sound of a 15-year-old finally letting the day go. He slept the way he did everything now, curled tight, knees up, one hand tucked under his cheek. On the shelf above the bunk sat the things he wouldn't travel without. A composition notebook, black cover, the corners soft from handling, a road atlas thick with folded pages, and a red baseball cap, sun-faded to the color of old brick, that had never once been on his head. That cap wasn't his. He knew it. He kept it anyway. Imani checked the mirror again. Empty road. She let her shoulders come down half an inch. They had $400. She knew the number the way she knew the cup holder, without looking, without wanting to. 400, minus the diesel she'd have to buy before Denver, minus the way station fine, still sitting unpaid in the glove box, minus whatever the boy needed. He never asked for anything. That was the part that got her. A kid who'd learned not to ask. The dash clock rolled to 3:04. Somewhere ahead, a sign promised a rest stop in 12 miles. She'd make it that far, and let herself close her eyes for 20 minutes. Not more. 20 minutes was the deal she made with herself every night, and every night she broke it by 10 and hated herself for the 10. She turned the radio down until it was almost nothing. A man 200 miles east, reading grain prices to no one. This was the family now. 2 people and a truck. She hadn't planned it. Nobody planned this. 11 months ago, she'd been driving this same rig alone, running long haul because long haul paid, and because an empty cab was easier to sit in than an empty apartment. Then one gray morning outside Topeka, she'd found a boy walking the shoulder in the rain, soaked to the skin, no shoes, eyes that didn't focus, and she'd done the only thing a person could do. She'd stopped. She'd stopped, and she hadn't been able to start again. Not the way she was before. The notebook on the shelf had grown thick since then. He wrote in it every day, Cities they passed through, the mileage between them, the price of a gallon at each stop, small tallies of dollars in a column he balanced better than she did. He'd appointed himself the keeper of the maps and the money, the way another kid might take over the remote. She let him. It gave his hands something to do, and it turned out he was good at it, better than good. He could tell her the cheapest fuel between here and the Rockies without opening the atlas. He just knew. She'd asked him once where he learned numbers like that. He'd gone quiet and looked out the window, and she never asked again. 3:09. The rain thinned to a drizzle, and then, ahead, she saw the glow. Wrong color. Not the amber of a rest stop, not the blue-white of a truck lot. This came from above, sweeping. A hard cone of light that swung down across the fields and lit the falling water silver for one whole second before it passed. She heard it before she placed it, the thud that lived under her breastbone. A helicopter, low, running some line search off the interstate, or medevac, or nothing to do with them at all. 60 different reasons, all of them ordinary. None of that mattered. Behind the curtain, the boy came awake with a sound she'd heard exactly 4 times before, and every one of those times had cut a groove in her she couldn't sand out. It wasn't a scream she could have handled. It was the opposite, a held-in gasp, all the air pulling the wrong way, a body trying to make itself small and silent and gone. She heard him press back against the wall of the bunk, heard the atlas slide off the shelf and hit the floor. Eli. She kept her voice level and low. She had learned that. Loud made it worse. Eli, baby, it's me. It's Imani. The chopper swept again, the light raking across the windshield, and he made the sound again, thinner. Imani flicked the signal, dropped the gears down, and rolled the rig onto the wide gravel shoulder with the slow care of someone parking around a sleeping animal. Air brakes sighed. She killed nothing else, kept the running lights, kept the low hum of the engine, because she'd learned that too. That sudden dark and sudden quiet frightened him more than noise. She unclipped her belt and turned in the seat and pushed the curtain the rest of the way back. He was against the far wall of the bunk, knees to his chest, both arms over his head, long black hair fallen across his face. He was shaking in a way that had nothing to do with cold. Hey, look at me. She didn't reach for him. She had reached for him the first time, and he had struck out, blind, terrified, and caught her across the eyebrow. The small scar was still there, a pale seam above her right brow that she touched sometimes without meaning to. She didn't reach now. She put her hand flat on the mattress where he could see it and left it there. The light came around a third time, weaker, the helicopter already sliding off north toward whatever it was chasing, but he couldn't know that. Inside his head it was directly above them, and it had come for him. So Imani did the only thing that had ever worked. She sang. Not words. There weren't any words. Or if there had been, she didn't know them. It was a small tune, 6 or 7 notes, rising and then folding back down on itself. The kind of thing a person hums over a crib without deciding to. Low in her chest. She'd been singing it to him since the first night. Since the motel outside Topeka where he wouldn't sleep and wouldn't speak, and it was the first thing that had reached him through whatever wall he lived behind. She'd told him she made it up. She half believed it. Where else would it have come from? It had just risen out of her that night the way it rose now, and it had reached down into wherever he'd gone and taken hold of his hand. The shaking slowed. She sang it again, the same 6 notes, no louder. His arms came down from his head. One eye showed through the fallen hair, fixed on her, then both. The helicopter light was gone entirely now, the field outside black again, only the rain and the running lights, and her voice going around and around, that small closed circle of sound. There he is, she murmured, between passes of the tune. There's my guy. It's just weather, baby. Just a bird up in the weather. Nothing up there wants us. His breathing came back. She could see it settle in his shoulders, the way a wire loosens. She kept the tune going a few passes longer than she needed to, because stopping too soon was its own mistake. She'd learned that on the third night, in a lot outside Wichita, when she'd let go of the notes the second he seemed calm and he'd dropped straight back down into it. So she held on now, around and around, until his hands lay still in his lap and the tune had nowhere left to go. Only then did she let it thin out and fade, the last note not so much sung as set down. He wiped his face with the heel of his hand, hard, angry at himself. 15. Old enough to be ashamed of it. That shame hurt her worse than the fear did. "Sorry," he said. His voice was rough with sleep and the other thing. "I'm sorry." "Don't." She said it soft, but she meant it flat. "Don't you say sorry to me. Not for that. Not ever for that." He pulled his knees down and sat up against the wall and looked at his own hands. On his right wrist he wore a bracelet, red cord, frayed, wound twice and knotted, with a single steel nut threaded onto it, the kind that came off a truck bolt. He'd made it himself out of something he found in the cab their second week. He turned the nut with his thumb, around and around, and she watched him come the rest of the way back into the world, one turn at a time. She reached up and picked the atlas off the floor and set it back on the shelf beside the black notebook and the red cap. Straightened the cap without thinking, the way she'd straighten a thing that was supposed to be somewhere. "You want to come up front," she said. Not a question. It was the ritual. After the bad ones, he rode shotgun. He climbed over the console in his big gray sweatshirt and his socks and folded himself into the passenger seat, drawing his feet up under him. She handed him the thermos. He made a face at the cold coffee and drank it anyway, because he was hers now in the small ways, the ways that came out sideways. Imani got them back on the road. The drizzle died. To the east, the black had just begun to go gray at its lowest edge, the first rumor of a morning still 2 hours off. For a while, neither of them said anything. The tires hummed, the heater ticked. "It was low tonight," he said finally, watching the guardrail slide by. "That's why." "I know it was. When they're high up, I'm okay." He turned the steel nut on his wrist. "It's when they come down low. Then we'll just keep to the flat country," she said. "Kansas is nothing but flat. Sky stays where it belongs out here." The corner of his mouth moved, not a smile. The place a smile would go, if he had one left to spend. It was enough. She'd learned to bank the small ones. "That song," he said, after a while. He was looking at the dark glass, at his own faint reflection riding the guardrail. "You really made it up." "Told you I did. You don't know any other songs. You sing along to the radio wrong." He said it without heat, almost fond, turning the nut. "But that one, you never get wrong. Maybe that's how you know it's mine." She kept her eyes on the road. She didn't tell him the truth, which was that she didn't know where it came from, that it had walked up out of her that first night whole and finished like it had been waiting in her a long time for a reason to come out. Some things you didn't hand a scared kid at 3 in the morning. You just kept singing them. She'd never pushed him on it. In 11 months, she'd built the whole shape of him out of pieces like this, dropped one at a time, never asked for. He didn't like the sound of helicopters. He didn't like men in dark suits. A suit in a truck stop diner could put him under the table. He counted exits. He knew, without being told, how to disappear inside a room. She'd stopped trying to add the pieces into a picture because every picture she built was worse than the last, and none of them was hers to fix. She could only keep him fed and keep him moving and keep singing the 6 notes when the sky came down. "You hungry?" she said. "No." "Liar." She reached across him, popped the glove box, kept her hand off the folded find sitting in there. and came out with a sleeve of crackers wedged up on the dash. Half of everything she owned lived on that dashboard. She dropped the crackers in his lap. Eat. We're not stopping till Colby. He ate. She drove. The gray at the edge of the world spread up a little higher. She thought about the $400, and the fine, and the diesel, and the way the transmission had started to hunt for third on the grades. She thought about what a caseworker would say if a caseworker ever climbed up into this cab and saw a 15-year-old boy who wasn't hers by any paper in the world, living on a dashboard, waking up screaming at the sky. She thought about the word for what she was doing, the word other people would use, and she made herself not think it, because thinking it did nothing, and she had a load due in Denver by noon. She had come to this the long way. She wasn't a woman who'd been looking to take anything on. 4 years ago, she'd had a house and a name on a mailbox next to another name, and then the other name was gone. A jacket still hanging by the door, a red cap on a hook, a phone call from a state trooper that ended the life she'd been living inside of. She wore what was left of that on a chain around her neck, tucked under her shirt where nobody saw it. A plain gold band that had been sized for a bigger hand than hers. Some nights she pressed it flat against her breastbone through the cotton and let it be the only weight she carried. She hadn't gone looking for the boy, but the boy had come, out of the rain, and something in her that had been standing with its hands empty for 2 years had closed around him and would not open. She knew what she looked like from the outside. She didn't care what she looked like from the outside. Nobody who had watched him come apart tonight and put himself back together with a piece of red string would care either. Imani, he'd stopped chewing. He was looking at the atlas, which he'd pulled into his lap without her seeing. The load. Denver. He had it open to Colorado, one finger on a spot east of the city. It's not going to the yard on Brighton. The paper says a different place. There's paper? She'd taken the run off the board 2 days ago, quick, because it paid, and because it was going her way. She hadn't read past the rate. He held up the manifest he'd fished out of the door pocket, because he read everything, because reading everything was another thing he did with his hands, so his head would be quiet. New terminal, west of Denver, up toward the mountains. He tilted it to the dash light and read the name off the top of the page. Slow, the English shape of it, careful in his mouth. Seo Group Logistics. He said it flat, the way you'd read any of 100 company names off any of 100 bills of lading. He didn't know what it was. She could see that. It meant nothing to him, just letters, just a place with a gate and a dock, and a man who'd sign for the freight and stamp her sheet so she could get paid, and buy the diesel, and pay the fine, and keep the two of them rolling one more week. Imani took the manifest from him and glanced at it and handed it back and put her eyes on the road, and the morning kept coming up gray in the east, and she had no way in the world to know that the name he'd just read out loud in the dark was the one name on the whole continent she should have turned the truck around and driven away from. Long way up, was all she said. We'll be there by noon. He set the atlas back on his knees and found the road with his finger and started, out of habit, to count the miles. The gate came up out of the heat, like something built to keep the mountain out. Imani slowed the rig to a crawl, watching the numbers on the sign resolve as she got closer. Seo Group Logistics. Below it, a smaller line in 2 alphabets, the English one worn to a suggestion. A guard in a gray uniform stepped out of the booth before she'd fully stopped. Manifest, he said. Not unkind, just a man who'd said the word 10,000 times. She passed it down through the window. He ran a light over the barcode, then over her face, then over the cab behind her head. His eyes held on the curtain a half-second too long. Just me, Imani said. He handed the paper back. Bay 11. Follow the yellow line. You don't leave the truck until they wave you off the scale. The gate rolled. She eased through, and the terminal opened up around her. A yard the size of 6 football fields, everything new, everything quiet in the way that costs money. No shouting, no radios crackling, men in matching coveralls, moving pallets like they were being timed by someone who mattered. Behind the curtain, Eli was awake. She felt him more than heard him, the small shift of weight, the breath that changed. He'd learned to go still in places like this without being told. "Stay back there," she said, low. "This is a clean one. In and out, we eat in Limon." "Okay." A beat. "Why's it so quiet?" "Rich people are quiet." She found the yellow line and let the truck roll along it. Loud costs them customers. Bay 11 had a man waiting with a clipboard and a headset. He waved her forward with 2 fingers, back with a flat palm, forward again by inches, until the trailer kissed the dock seal and a green light came on somewhere she couldn't see. He drew a finger across his throat and she cut the engine. The silence after was enormous. 40 minutes, the man said through her window. Break rooms through the blue door if you want coffee. Bathrooms past it. You leave the yard, your load waits till second shift. "I'll take the coffee." She wasn't going to take the coffee. She said it because saying yes made men wave you through faster. But her thermos had been empty since Colby, and her back had a knot in it shaped like 900 miles, and the blue door was 40 feet away. "I'm going to stand up for a minute," she told the curtain. "You stay put. You hear a helicopter, you count the door. I'm right here." "I know," Eli said. Then, quieter, the way he said things he wanted her to argue with. "You always say that." "Because it's always true." She climbed down. The dock was cool and smelled of new concrete, and something floral pumped through the vents. She rolled her shoulders once, twice, felt the knot decide whether to loosen. Through the glass of the blue door, she could see the break room, vending machines, a long table, a wall-mounted screen playing something with the sound off. She went in for the coffee she didn't want, because her body wanted to move, and this was a place to move to. The machine took $2 and gave her something brown. She drank it standing, watching the screen out of habit, the way you watch any screen in any waiting room. A corporate reel, men in hard hats shaking hands, a ribbon getting cut, numbers climbing on a blue graph. The Seo dragon turning slow in the corner like a logo learning to breathe. Then the reel changed. A woman's face filled the screen, Korean, young, laughing at something off camera, a garden behind her going soft with distance, white text underneath in 2 languages. Dates. A birth year and a year 4 years gone. The kind of card a company puts up when the founder loses someone, and the founder is the kind of man nobody tells no. Imani had seen 100 of these. She almost looked away. Then the music came up under it. 6 notes, then the 7th. Her hand stopped with the cup halfway down. She knew that. She knew it the way you know your own heartbeat. Not as information, as fact, as the thing under everything else, the rise. The little catch on the 5th note where it almost turned sad and then didn't. The way it held the last one longer than a song needs to, like it was waiting for something to fall asleep. She had sung that into a boy's ear in a motel outside Topeka 11 months ago, and sworn on nothing she owned that she'd made it up. The cup touched the table without her deciding to put it down. Someone was speaking now over the melody, a man's voice, warm and careful in Korean, and she caught only a word here and there, a name. Sarang. Something about a lullaby the woman used to sing. The garden woman on the screen tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. The melody looped. 6 notes, the 7th. Behind her, the blue door opened. She turned before she'd finished the thought, and Eli was standing in it. He'd left the truck. He never left the truck. He was standing in the doorway in his big hoodie, with the drawstrings uneven, And he wasn't looking at her. He was looking past her at the screen, at the laughing woman, at the dates, and his face had gone the color of the concrete. Eli, she was already moving. Baby, you can't be in here. You have to. He said a word. It wasn't English. It came out of him small and cracked, from somewhere older than the boy she knew, and she felt it hit the room before she understood it. Appa. His knees went. She got an arm across his chest before his head found the floor. His weight came down all at once, all of it, dead and total, and she went to one knee under him with her hand behind his skull, the way you hold something that isn't yours to break. His eyes were rolled up soft. His lips were still moving around the shape of the word. Eli. Eli. She had him flat now, on the cool floor, her jacket bunched under his neck. Hey, I'm here. Count the door. Count it with me. The melody was still playing. The garden woman was still laughing on the wall above them both, and the loop came around again. 6 notes, the 7th, and the boy on the floor shuddered under Imani's hands, like the sound was reaching all the way inside him and pulling. She twisted and threw the empty cup at the screen. It missed. She didn't care. Turn that off, she said, to the room, to no one. Somebody turn that off. A woman in coveralls had appeared in the far doorway with her mouth open. Above her, screwed into the corner of the ceiling, a small black dome caught the overhead light and held it. Imani didn't see the camera. She saw her boy. His hoodie had ridden up when he fell, the collar pulled sideways off his neck, his long hair fanned back against the floor. And there, behind his left ear, in the flat white light, a mark she had washed 100 times and never once questioned. A pale crescent, thin as a fingernail paring, the shape of a moon 3 days from full. She pressed 2 fingers under his jaw. His pulse was there, fast, but there. Come on, she breathed. Come on, come back to me. It's the same as always. It's just a bad one. You come back now. His eyes drifted down, found her, filled. I saw her, he said. You saw a TV, that's all. A TV in a break room. I saw her. He was crying now without sound, the way he cried, the tears just arriving and running sideways into his hair. The song. She had the song. You said, he stopped. Something moved behind his eyes. Some terrible arithmetic. You said you made it up. Imani's mouth opened. Nothing came. Above them, the screen had moved on. The garden woman was gone. Men in hard hats again. Blue graph again. The dragon turning. The break room hummed its floral hum, like nothing had happened in it at all. We're going, Imani said. She got her arm under him. Up, slow, lean on me. The woman in the doorway hadn't moved. Is he? He's fine. He gets these. Move, please. And the woman moved, and Imani walked her boy out of that room with his weight against her side and his sneakers dragging every 3rd step, and she did not look at the black dome in the ceiling because she did not know it was there, and because a mother crossing 40 feet of concrete with a fainting child is not counting the ceiling. She got him up the 2 dock steps and along the trailer with her shoulder wedged into his armpit, and every man in that yard watched them go, and every man pretended not to. She felt their eyes like weather. A clean load, she'd told him, in and out. She'd believed it herself an hour ago. She got him up into the passenger seat, put the thermos in his hands out of habit, though it was empty, found the crackers. He held both and ate neither. Breathe for me, she said, one hand flat on his back. Nice and slow, in through the nose. He breathed. His hand came up on its own and found the bracelet and started to turn the steel nut around and around, and she watched it and let it happen and said nothing while the color came back into him by degrees. She'd seen 100 versions of this. The helicopter over Kansas, the state trooper who'd tapped her window in Wichita and sent the boy under the bunk shaking. Men in dark coats in a truck stop parking lot who'd only been buying cigarettes. Every time, she'd told herself the same soft lie. He'll grow out of it. Whatever it was is behind him. The road took it away. She had needed that lie the way she needed Diesel. Now it was gone, and she could feel the shape of the thing it had been covering, and the shape was enormous. "You're okay," she said, and it was half a question this time. "You're okay. I'm okay." He didn't sound it. He sounded like a boy reading words off a card. Out on the dock, a light over Bay 11 flicked from red to green. Her load was done. Somebody would come to wave her off the scale, and she wanted to be a mile gone before they did. "I don't understand," Eli said finally. His voice had steadied into something worse than crying. "How did she have your song?" "It's not my song. It came out before she chose it." She heard herself say it, and knew it was the first true thing she'd said about the melody in 11 months. Eli, I don't know where I got it. I thought I made it up. I swear to you, I thought I made it up." He looked at her, 15 years old and looking at her like the floor had tilted. "Then who taught it to you?" he said. She had no answer. She started the truck instead. The engine turned over and caught, and she reached for the gear shift. And that was when the man came out onto the dock. Not the clipboard man. Someone else. Someone in a gray suit with a headset pressed to one ear, walking fast, scanning the bays. Looking for a truck. Looking, she understood with a cold drop in her stomach, for this truck. She didn't wait for the wave. She pulled the rig off the dock seal in a hiss of released air and swung it wide toward the yellow line. And in her mirror, the gray suit stopped and lifted a hand. Not a wave. "Stop." And she put the terminal behind her at 15 miles an hour, because 15 was all the yard allowed, and running would bring them faster than leaving. The gate was down when she reached it. The same guard stepped out. "You're not cleared off the scale," he said. "Kid's sick." She let him see Eli folded against the window. Gray. Real. "I'm not sitting in your yard while he throws up on your dock. Raise it." The guard looked at the boy, looked at the headset crackling on his own shoulder. Something came through it she couldn't hear. His hand went toward it. "Raise it," Imani said again, and put $400 of "don't test me" into her voice, and the man was a father or a decent stranger or just tired, because he raised it. She took the truck out onto the access road and turned east toward the interstate, and did not breathe right until the mountains were behind her, and the mirror held nothing but road. The interstate took them in, and she let the truck find its lane and hold it, 70, steady, the yellow dashes ticking by like a metronome she couldn't turn off. Her hands were doing the driving on their own. The rest of her was back in that break room, kneeling, hearing the 7th note hang in the air over her son. She thought of the first night. A motel outside Topeka, the boy soaked through and mute in the corner, with his knees to his chest, flinching every time the ice machine cycled. She hadn't known one thing to do for a child like that. She'd never had one, so she'd sat on the floor a careful arm's length away, and because she couldn't think of anything to say, she'd hummed, a little rising thing, 6 notes and a 7th, that had come up out of her from nowhere, and steadied him inch by inch until he slept. She had told him for 11 months that she'd made it up on the spot. She'd half believed she was telling the truth. She had not made it up. Somewhere, sometime, someone had put that melody into her the way you put a coin in a hand. She didn't know when. She didn't know who. The not knowing sat in her chest now like a swallowed stone. Beside her, Eli had gone quiet in the particular way that scared her most. Not calm, emptied. He watched the guardrail come and go. After a long time, he said, "That was my father." baby, on the wall. That was, I know it. I know his voice. His fingers found the red cord at his wrist again. I've been trying to remember his voice for so long, and it was right there. He was talking. Imani drove. The white line came at her and passed under. She thought of the notebook full of cities in his careful hand, the way he counted exits, the way he'd flinched at a helicopter over Kansas at 3 a.m. and known, without being told, to go still. She had built a whole life on the story that he'd fallen out of nowhere into her path, that nobody was looking, that the road had simply given her a son. The road had not given her anything for free. She knew that. She'd always known that. We're going to figure it out, she said. You and me, but not on their dock, and not with their cameras. He turned his head. What cameras? And she opened her mouth to say, there weren't any, and closed it, because she didn't know that either, and had stopped being able to say things she didn't know. 50 miles behind her, in a glass office that looked down on the whole quiet yard, that is exactly the thing that was happening. A man stood with his back to the room. Below him, the terminal ran on its clockwork. Trucks in, trucks out, and none of it reached him. On the desk behind him, a laptop was open to a still frame, paused, waiting. His assistant had knocked twice before coming in. She would not have come in for less. Sir, security flagged a clip from the West break room. I wouldn't have brought it up, only... She set the laptop where he could see and stepped back. Only the audio. He turned. The frame showed a break room, a woman, black, a worn cap in her hand, terror plain on her, kneeling over a boy on the floor. The boy's hoodie pulled sideways, his hair thrown back, and on the screen behind them both, small and out of focus but unmistakable, his wife's face, 4 years gone, laughing in her garden. Play it, he said. His assistant did not want to. She played it. The room filled with 6 notes, then the 7th. The man who owned the terminal, the yard, the mountain road, the dragon that turned slow on every screen in the building, the man they called the Iron Hand in rooms he wasn't in, did not move for the length of the loop. His hand, the one with the old scar across the palm, came to rest flat on the edge of the desk. On the small screen, the boy said a word. Appa. The assistant watched her employer's face and would tell no one, ever, what she saw cross it. Freeze it, he said. His voice had gone very quiet, quieter than the yard. There, when he falls. She dragged the marker back. The frame caught the boy mid-collapse, his head turned, the collar of the hoodie fallen away from his neck, the flat white light finding the skin behind his left ear. A crescent, thin as a fingernail, a moon 3 days from full. The man leaned toward the screen the way a man leans over water he isn't sure will hold him. He looked at the mark for a long time, long enough that his assistant began, quietly, to be afraid. The truck, he said at last. Plate, company. Which way it left? East, sir. Off the scale early. We have the plate. The driver's an owner-operator out of... I don't need her history. He was already reaching for the coat over the chair, already moving, and everything in the room reorganized itself around the fact of his moving. I need the road she's on. Sir, protocol says, cancel the Denver meetings. He shrugged the coat on. At the door he stopped, and looked back once at the frozen frame, at the crescent behind the boy's ear, at the mark he had last seen on a newborn in a hospital in Seoul with his wife's blood still on the sheets. Cancel all of them, he said. I'm driving. And 100 miles east, on the flat blind highway where the land gives no cover, and the sky is the only thing bigger than the road, Imani checked her mirror for the 4th time in a mile and found it empty, and told herself the empty was the truth, and reached over to press her hand once against her son's chest to feel it rise. It rose. She kept her hand there anyway. "Eat the crackers," she said. "We've got a long way to go." He looked at the crackers in his hand like he'd forgotten what they were. Then he ate one, slowly, watching the road unspool the same as she was, both of them heading east and away, neither of them knowing that the only thing in the world faster than a secret is the man it belongs to, and that he had just put on his coat. The black SUV came up on her left outside Limon and would not pass. Imani watched it in the mirror for a full mile. Sedans passed, pickups passed. This one held her blind spot at a steady 62, matching her when she slowed, matching her when she found the pedal again. Eli had fallen asleep against the door with the crackers still in his fist. She let him sleep. She kept both hands on the wheel and did the math she always did on a road she didn't trust. The next exit, the next town with people, the next place a truck this size could turn without dying. Then, the second one appeared ahead of her. It slid in from the on-ramp and settled into her lane 100 yards up, and it did the thing the first one did. It slowed. Not fast. Nothing about it was fast. It bled her speed off the way you bleed a brake line, a little at a time, so that if you weren't counting, you'd think you were choosing it yourself. She was counting. 58, 55. A third vehicle rode her bumper now, close enough that its hood filled her mirror. "Eli," she said it low. "Wake up. Buckle." He came up out of the seat with a gasp already in his chest, hand going to the door handle, eyes hunting the sky for a light that wasn't there. "No helicopter," she said. "Look at me. No helicopter. Cars. Just cars. Put the belt on." He put the belt on. His fingers missed the buckle twice. They boxed her at 40 and brought her down to a walk, and then they stopped her, all three at once, in a wide gravel pullout, where the frontage road split off from the interstate, and a grain elevator stood against the sky like a gray tooth. The lead SUV angled across her nose, the one behind pinned her tail, the third parked broadside off her door. She set the brake. She killed the running lights out of a habit she couldn't explain, and left the engine on. Men got out. Not many. 4, 5. Dark clothes, no uniforms, the kind of stillness that costs money to train into a body. One of them lifted a hand toward her windshield, palm out. The same flat stop she'd seen on the dock and driven straight past. She was not going to drive past this one. There was nowhere to drive. "Stay in the cab," she told Eli. "Whatever happens out there, you stay in the cab, and you count the doors, and you do not open one. Imani, you count them. Start now." She opened her door and stepped down into the gravel. The morning was flat and bright and cold. She reached back behind the seat without looking, the way she'd reached 1,000 times for a flashlight or a rag, and her hand closed on the pipe wrench she kept clipped by the sleeper. She brought it down to her side, not raised, just there. She walked around the front of her own truck and put her back to the grill and stood between the men and the door with the child behind it. "That's far enough," she said. They stopped. Not because of the wrench. She knew that. 5 men don't stop for a wrench. They stopped because someone had told them where the line was, and she'd just planted herself on the wrong side of it, and now they had to decide. The one in front spoke, accented English, careful. "Ma'am, we don't want a problem." "Then you're in the wrong parking lot." "There's a boy in the vehicle." "There's a boy in my vehicle, and you've got no name on any of these trucks, and no badge on any of those jackets." Her voice stayed even, smooth. She had learned a long time ago that the quiet ones were the ones people leaned in to hear. "So here's what I know. I know men who bring guns to a gravel lot at 8 in the morning don't work for anybody I want him going home with. Whatever paper you think you have, I don't see it. What I see is you surrounding a truck with a sleeping kid inside." "He's not sleeping now," the man said. "No," she agreed. "You made sure of that." A car door opened somewhere behind them. unhurried, and every man in the lot turned his shoulders a degree toward the sound the way iron filings turn. She knew before she saw him. She'd heard his voice once, out of a laptop she never saw, but she didn't need that. She only needed the way the others rearranged themselves. He came around the third SUV without hurrying, and the coat was the first thing wrong about him for a place like this. Long, dark, wool, city clothes on a gravel road. Tall. The morning caught the side of his neck, and she saw the ink there, black, climbing, a shape she didn't have a name for. His face gave her nothing. He looked at her the way a man looks at a bridge he has to cross and doesn't like. Then his eyes went past her, to the windshield, to the small shape sitting up straight in the passenger seat, with both hands pressed flat on the dash, counting. Something moved in the man's face and then didn't. His jaw shifted once. His hand, the right one, scarred across the palm, closed slowly at his side and opened again. "Step away from the truck," he said. "No. I'm not going to ask a second time." "Good," Imani said, "because the answer's not going to change." He came 2 steps closer and stopped, and this near, she could see the tiredness stacked under his eyes, the kind sleep doesn't touch. When he spoke again, the careful command had thinned out of it and left something rawer underneath. "That boy is my son." The wind moved the grain dust across the lot. Behind her, muffled by glass, she heard Eli's voice counting 1, 2, 3, 4, the same 4 doors, around and around. "Prove it," she said. It was the only card she had, and she played it flat on the gravel between them. Not a scream, not a plea. 2 words, and she watched them land, and she watched him understand that she meant to make him earn a thing he thought he already owned. "His name is Seo Ji-ho," the man said. "He has a mark behind his left ear, a crescent. He was born at 3 in the morning in a hospital in Seoul, and the cord was around his neck, and he didn't cry for 11 seconds. I counted them. His voice did not rise. You've had him 11 months. I've had him missing for 6 years. Do not tell me to prove it while you stand in front of the door. 6 years." She turned the number over. Eli had been 9 then. Somewhere. Not with this man. "He didn't come to me knowing your face. He came to me barefoot on the shoulder of a road outside Topeka, with no shoes, and no name and marks on his arm he still won't talk about. So you tell me, if you had him from a hospital in Seoul, where was he for the 5 years before he walked into my headlights?" For the first time, the man looked like she'd hit something. "That," he said, "is what I intend to find out." He lifted one finger, and the men behind him did not move toward her. He turned it a half inch, and they held. He wasn't performing it for her. It was just the way the world worked around him, and watching it work, she understood how much trouble she was in, and none of it changed where her feet were. "I'm not handing him out of a truck to strangers in a parking lot," she said. "I don't care whose blood he is. You want to do this, you do it where there's a table and a door that locks from the inside and somebody in the room who isn't yours. You do it with a doctor. You do it with paper. Not here. Not like this. Not while he's counting your cars trying not to come apart." The man looked at the windshield again. Ji-ho had stopped counting. He had his face turned toward the glass now, toward the tall shape in the coat, and even from the grill Imani could see the boy's mouth make a word it didn't have breath behind. Appa, the same word he'd dropped on a break room floor. His hands slid off the dash. The man went very still. Whatever he'd walked into that lot prepared to do, the shape of the small face behind the windshield had reached in and turned it. She saw the cost of him not moving toward the door. She almost respected it. "A doctor," he said finally. "A test. Neutral ground." He said something short over his shoulder in Korean, and one of the men went to a phone. "And when it says what I already know, then we'll be standing on new ground," Imani said. "And we'll figure out what's on it. But you're not taking a scared kid out of the only bed he's slept safe in for 11 months on a gravel road. Not today. She didn't lower the wrench. She didn't raise it either. She just held her ground with it hanging by her leg, and the man in the coat looked at her holding it, and something crossed his face that she couldn't read and didn't try to. "What's your name?" he said. "Imani Brooks. Seo Kangjun." He didn't offer the hand. She wouldn't have taken it. "Follow the lead vehicle, Miss Brooks. Not far. Denver. My truck stays with me. My phone stays on. And he rides with me, not with you, the whole way." A muscle moved at the corner of his jaw. "Fine. Say it so I believe it. He rides with you," Kangjun said. "You have my word, which is worth more than you currently think." She got back in the cab, and Eli grabbed her sleeve with both hands the second the door shut, and he was shaking, and she put her palm flat on his chest the way she always did, and felt the fast little engine of his heart under it. "Is it him?" Eli said. "Is it really him?" "We're going to find out the right way," she said, "with a doctor, not with these men and their trucks. I'm not letting anybody decide anything about you in a parking lot. You hear me?" He nodded against her arm. "You did good," she told him. "You counted. You stayed. That's how we do it." She put the truck in gear and pulled out behind the lead SUV, and the two others fell in around her, and she drove west again into the mountains she'd been so glad to leave, doing 30 behind a stranger's bumper, with the boy's hand knotted in her jacket. The clinic was private and quiet, and did not have a sign. They took her name at a desk and did not ask for insurance. A woman in a soft cardigan the color of oatmeal was already there when they arrived, sitting in the small waiting room with a large bag at her feet and a little hourglass in her hands that she turned over and over, and she stood when Imani came in with Eli half hidden behind her. "Miss Brooks, I'm Dr. Evelyn Carter." She had a warm brown face and reading glasses pushed up into short gray hair, and she did not look at Eli first, which Imani noticed, and filed away as the first decent thing anyone in that building had done. "I'm not one of theirs. I want you to know that going in, Mr. Seo's people called me because my name is on a list of people who work with children who've been through things. I work for the child. That's the only client I have ever had." "They all say that," Imani said. "They do." Carter didn't argue it. "You'll decide whether I'm lying based on what I do, same as you decided about the man in the coat. That's the right way to decide it." She crouched then, slowly, bringing herself under Eli's eye line without reaching for him. "Hey, I'm Evelyn." "That's a good bracelet. Did you make it?" Eli's fingers found the steel nut and turned it. He didn't answer, but he didn't hide further either. The test was a swab, nothing more. A gloved hand, a long cotton stem, the inside of a cheek, 10 seconds. They swabbed the boy and they swabbed Kangjun in a separate room so the two of them wouldn't have to be in the same 4 walls before anyone was ready, and Imani stood with her back against the wall the entire time, with her arms crossed over the chain under her shirt, over Marcus's ring, and she watched every hand that came near the child. Kangjun's lawyer arrived while they waited, gray suit, silver at the temples, a leather folder he set on the table, like a man laying down a winning hand before the cards are turned. He did not look at Imani when he spoke. He spoke to the room. "For the record, Miss Brooks has been in unlicensed custody of a minor across state lines for 11 months. There are statutes: kidnapping, interstate transport of a minor, endangerment, a child, living in the cab of a commercial vehicle, no schooling, no medical. Stop." Imani came off the wall. She didn't raise her voice. She'd learned that too. On the road, at counters, in scale house offices, where men with clipboards liked the sound of themselves. You don't out-loud them, you out-still them. She reached into the inside pocket of her jacket, the one with the zipper, the one she kept the things she couldn't afford to lose in, and she took out a folded square of paper worn soft at the creases and set it on the table next to his leather folder. Topeka General, she said. 11 months ago, emergency intake, a boy, no ID, malnourished, dehydrated, scars consistent with restraint. I brought him in myself. My name's on it as the person who found him. You want a second one? Here. Another fold of paper. Children's Services, Shawnee County. I filed. I called them. For 4 months I called them and left messages and drove back through Topeka to sit in a waiting room. And you know what they told me? No match. No report. No missing child anywhere in the system with a crescent behind his left ear. Nobody was looking for him. She set down a third. Receipts. That's the dentist that fixed the tooth somebody knocked loose before I ever met him. That's the shoes. That's the coat. That's the doctor in Amarillo when the fever wouldn't break. You want to talk about what I spent on this child counselor? I've got every dollar of it written down, because I don't have a dollar to lose. I put everything I had into a kid nobody in your world could be bothered to look for. So you take your kidnapping and you... Miss Brooks. Kangjun had come to the doorway. He was looking at the papers on the table. He picked up the first one, the intake sheet, and he read it, and she watched his eyes move down the line where it said scars consistent with restraint, and stop. He set it down very carefully, the way you set down something you've decided not to break. Withdraw it, he said, without turning to the lawyer. Sir, the leverage. I said withdraw it. Quiet, final. The lawyer closed his folder. Kangjun stood with the intake sheet under his hand, and Imani watched a man rearrange, in real time, a story he'd driven all night believing. The story where she was the one who took his son. It didn't make him softer. If anything, the thing that came up behind his eyes was worse, because now he had to look at the years and wonder who had really had the boy, and where, and why the system had never once heard a whisper. Restraint. She'd handed him that word, and he couldn't put it down. Dr. Carter's phone lit on the table. She read it. She read it again. Then she looked up, and she looked at Imani first, which Imani would remember. The comparison came back, Carter said. It's a match. To Mr. Seo. She let that sit exactly 1 second. That tells us whose blood he is. It doesn't tell us where he's slept for 6 years, and it doesn't tell us who he trusts. Those are different questions, and the second one has an answer already, and the answer is sitting in that chair holding her sleeve. Kangjun looked at his son across the room. Jiho had both hands wrapped around Imani's forearm. He had not let go since they walked in. He was looking at his father, at the confirmed, proven, blood and bone fact of his father, and he was holding on to the trucker with the grease under her nails, like the last cleat on a boat in a current. I want to take him home, Kangjun said, not to Imani, to the room, to himself, maybe. You can't, Carter said gently, not the way you mean, not today, and maybe not for a long time. That boy has one safe person on this earth right now, and it isn't you yet. You take him from her tonight, and you'll teach him that the men who come in dark cars take him away from the people who keep him. He already believes that. You'll have proven it. She turned the hourglass over on the table, and the sand started to run, and nobody in the room seemed able to look away from it. So here's what happens instead. Supervised time. Here, on neutral ground, with me in the room. You get to be near him. She stays. He decides how fast, and he decides it with his body, not with a calendar. That's the only door that opens without breaking him. For how long? Kangjun said. For as long as it takes. Carter capped her pen. You've waited 6 years. You can wait the way that keeps him. Imani felt the boy's grip on her arm, and she did not shake it off, and she did not promise him anything she couldn't keep. She looked at the tall man across the room, at the ink on his neck, and the scar on his palm, and the exhaustion he wore like the coat, and she understood that whatever this was, it was hers now too, that she had not lost him yet, but that the ground she'd told the man they'd be standing on had opened right under her feet. "Fine," she said. "Supervised. Here." She meant it as a wall. She would learn later it was a door. Kangjun took one step toward his son and stopped when the boy's hand tightened on Imani's sleeve, and he read it, and he made himself stand still, and that, the standing still, was the first thing Imani saw him do that she believed. Then Dr. Carter's phone rang again, a different tone, and the woman's face changed as she answered it, and she stood up out of her chair, with the little hourglass forgotten, and spilling on its side, and she said into the phone, "Say that again. Say it slowly," and every person in that quiet room without a sign turned to look at her. Dr. Carter listened and said, "How long ago?" And then, "Which outlet?" And then she set the phone face down on the desk and pressed her palm flat on top of it, as if the call could crawl back out. "That was the front desk of a hospital in Denver," she said. "A man phoned an hour ago asking to confirm they were treating a trafficked Korean minor recovered from a truck. He had the boy's age. He had the make of the cab. Kangjun had been standing at the window with his back to the room. He turned. 'No one outside this building knows the boy is in a truck,' he said. 'No one outside this building except the men on that dock.' Then somebody on that dock made a call." Carter took her glasses off and folded them. "It doesn't matter who yet. What matters is the story now has a shape and a location, and both of them are wrong, and both of them lead to a 15-year-old sitting in this room. A leak like that doesn't stay a leak. It becomes a search." Imani felt Jiho's hand tighten on her sleeve. Kangjun crossed to the desk. When he spoke, it was low and fast, and his voice had changed. The smooth had burned off it. "A fixed address is a target. This clinic, my terminal, a hotel, every one of them is a room a man can walk into if he knows the door." He looked at the boy, then at the truck visible through the window, sitting alone in the lot with its cab dark. "The one thing no one can find on a map at 3 in the morning is a truck already moving." "You want to put him back on the road," Imani said. "I want to put all of us on the road." He was already unbuttoning the dark coat. He shrugged it off his shoulders and laid it over the back of a chair, and without it, he looked less like the man from the dock and more like something you could have passed at a fuel island and never marked. He rolled one sleeve to the elbow, then the other. No convoy. 3 black cars behind a semi on the interstate is a parade. 1 truck, 1 driver, running east, and then wherever you say, "That's invisible." You know this. You've been invisible for 11 months. Imani studied him, the iron hand, folding his own coat. "My truck. My rules." She stood. "You ride in the sleeper. He rides up front with me where I can reach him. You touch nothing. You tell me nothing about which road to take. I drive. Your cargo." Something moved at the corner of his mouth that on another man might have been the start of a smile. "Cargo," he said. "You heard me." Carter picked up her bag. "Then I'm cargo too, because that child does not travel without one adult whose only job is him. And that's the deal I signed on to, and the deal I'll die on." They were rolling by dark. Kangjun sent his men ahead to Denver and behind to the terminal and told them, in Korean, to hold their positions and their phones, and then he climbed up into the sleeper of a stranger's truck with nothing in his hands, and the door of the world he ran clicked shut behind him. For the first hour, the boy watched the mirror. "No one's back there," Imani said. "Someone is always back there," Jiho said. But he said it the way you recite a rule you're starting to doubt, and after a while, he stopped turning his head and started counting mile markers under his breath, and counting was the closest thing to peace his body knew. They came off the interstate for fuel a little before dawn, a wide lot under sodium lights, a diner with a red neon sign missing its last letter. Imani filled the tanks herself. She told the boy to stay high in the cab with the doors locked and the man in back to stay where he was, and she went in for coffee that would at least be hot. Two men at the counter turned when the bell over the door rang. She'd read 100 rooms like it. She read this one in 3 seconds. The way the bigger one set his cup down, the way the other one grinned before anything was funny. She got her coffee, she paid. She was 3 steps from the door when the bigger one said the first thing, and it was about her, and about where a woman like her ought to be at this hour, and it used a word. Imani stopped. She turned around slow, the way you turn when you have all the time in the world and no fear left to spend. You got a lot to say to a stranger's back, she said. Say it to my face and we'll see how it holds up. The grin flickered. The bigger man pushed off his stool. Behind Imani, the bell over the door gave the smallest sound, and she knew without looking that the sleeper had emptied and a man in shirt sleeves had come to stand in the doorway, and she lifted one hand behind her hip, flat, palm back, the same gesture she'd seen him make all day, the one that said hold, and to her own surprise the man in the doorway held. She didn't need him. That was the thing she wanted him to see. I drive a 90,000-pound truck through weather that would put you under your bed, she told the counter, and her voice never rose. I've changed a tire on a shoulder, with cars going by at 80. There is nothing you have got that scares me, and there is nothing you can say that I haven't already heard from better mouths than yours. Now I'm going to walk out that door, and you're going to sit down, because the only thing worse than a long night is a long night with a broken hand. She let the silence do the rest. It always did. The bigger man sat down. The grin was gone. Imani walked out into the cold with her coffee, and Kang Jun stepped back to let her pass, and neither of them said a word about it until they were rolling again, and the lot was a smear of light behind them. You didn't move, she said. You told me to hold. You always do what a woman tells you in a diner. No. He was quiet a moment. But you weren't asking for help. You were telling me to watch. So I watched. He looked out at the dark road unspooling. I have spent 20 years making men afraid of me, with an army at my back. I have never once done what you just did with your 2 hands and nothing else. Imani said nothing, but something in the cab shifted a degree warmer, and the boy between them felt it, and let his head tip toward the window, and slept. For a while there was only the road, the heater ticking. The white line coming and coming. Kang Jun sat with his forearms on his knees, and watched the country go by. And he was a man who had never in his adult life ridden anywhere he was not driving, and Imani could see him learning the difference, that a passenger has nothing to do with his hands, and nowhere to put his eyes but out. He counts, Kang Jun said finally, nodding at the sleeping boy. In his sleep, his lips move. Numbers. Miles, Imani said. Fuel prices. Exits. He keeps a book of them. He's been keeping himself alive with a pencil since before I found him. She checked the mirror. First month I had him, I thought it was a habit. Took me a while to understand it was armor. A boy who knows exactly how far the next town is, knows exactly how far he can run. Kang Jun looked at his son for a long moment. I don't know a single number about his life, he said. How tall he was at 10, what he was afraid of at 6, whether anyone taught him to count or whether he taught himself. He turned back to the windshield. You know all of it. I know 11 months of it, Imani said. That's not the same as all of it. No, he agreed, but it's 11 months more than his father has. She let that sit, because there was nothing to do with a true thing but let it sit. The sky had gone gray at the edges when Kang Jun took out his phone. He'll sleep another hour, he said, watching the boy. I want to use it. He turned the screen so Imani could see it at a glance and no more, her eyes on the road. My family, the company, everyone who had access to a manifest, a route, a container. In the years my son was gone. If he was held by someone with reach, the face is in here. When he wakes, I want to be able to ask him one careful question, not scroll through 200 strangers in front of him. Don't wake him to do it, Imani said. I won't. But the boy was already awake. He'd been awake since the diner, the way children learn to be, with their breathing even and their eyes shut. He opened them now, and he looked at the phone in his father's hand, at the grid of faces sliding by, men in suits at ribbon cuttings and dinners and boardrooms, and he went very still. Stop, Jiho said. Kangjun's thumb froze. The boy leaned in. He didn't look at the face. His eyes had dropped to the hand, a hand resting on a table in the photo, at the edge of the frame, almost cropped out. On the third finger there was a ring. A flat black stone, onyx, set in a band with a mark cut into the metal beside it. That one, Jiho whispered. He wore that ring. Imani checked the mirror out of pure habit and forced her eyes back to the road. Who is he, baby? I don't know his face. It was dark, but the ring, the boy's voice had gone thin and far away. He'd come to the room. He'd put his hand on the table like that, flat, so I could see it, and he'd tell me to be good. He said the ring meant family. He said family was the only thing that came for you. Jiho's own hand had found the red cord at his wrist and was turning the steel nut on it, fast. I used to look at the ring so I didn't have to look at his eyes. Kangjun said something in Korean, low, and it was not a curse, it was worse than a curse. He pulled the phone back. He looked at the ring in the photograph for a long moment, and every trace of the road left his face, and the iron hand came back into it and did not leave. What is it? Imani said. You know that ring. I know that ring. He set the phone in his lap, screen down. It's not a jeweler's ring. You can't buy it. It's a signet. There are 11 of them cast, and they go to the men of one branch of my family, the secondary branch, my father's brother's line. His jaw worked. The reversion branch, the men who inherit everything I own if my son and I are both in the ground. Family, Imani said. It came out of her flat. You put a ring on a man so everybody knows whose blood he is, and then you use that same ring to make a stolen child feel loved while you starve him in a room. Yes. That's not family. That's a brand. That's what you burn into a thing you own. She glanced at the boy, at his fingers still working the steel nut on the cord, and dropped her voice. He's spent 6 years thinking the mark on that man's hand meant somebody came for him. You'd best make real sure the next thing he learns is that somebody actually did. Kangjun looked at her, and whatever he'd been about to say he set down unspoken. The cab was silent, except for the tires. Someone from your own family held him, Imani said slowly. Someone from your own family held him, Imani said slowly. Someone from your own family held him, Imani said slowly. Someone from your own family held him, Imani said slowly. For Himjun said, and let him believe it was love. He looked out the windshield at the mountains gathering ahead, at the long gray grade rising into them, and Imani watched a man rebuild his whole understanding of the last 6 years in the space of a breath. It had never been an outside enemy. It had never been strangers on a dock. The hand that had taken his child wore a ring cast in his own family's mold. The war was inside the house. Hold the boy, Kangjun said quietly. Whatever comes next. He believed that ring was the only thing that would come for him. He needs to learn it lied. They started up the grade. Imani felt it in the pedal before she felt it anywhere else. The first press was fine. The second press was a half-inch softer, and a half-inch is nothing to a car and everything to a truck. And the third press went to the floor and gave her back almost nothing, and every other thought she'd had in the last minute emptied out of her at once. Brakes, she said. One word, flat. She didn't panic, because panic was a luxury for people who had time. Her hands were already moving. She came off the failing service brakes so she wouldn't cook what little she had left, dropped a gear, and the engine roared and grabbed, and she reached for the engine brake, and it caught, and the whole truck shuddered like a horse pulled up hard. "Belt," she said to the boy. "Now, both hands on the strap, head down. To the sleeper, without turning. Brace. Whatever you're holding, let it go and brace." The grade steepened. The truck wanted to run, and she wouldn't let it. Gearing down again, riding the engine and the jake, feathering what was left of the service brakes in short stabs so they wouldn't fade to nothing, her eyes flicking to the mirror, to the shoulder, to the blue sign a half-mile up that she was already praying for before she could read it. "Runaway truck ramp, half-mile." "There's a ramp," she said. "It's gonna feel like we hit a wall. It's supposed to. Don't fight me and don't scream. I need my ears." She held it. 50, 45. Down through the gears, the engine howling, the smell of hot steel coming up through the floor now, the boy's knuckles white on the strap, and his eyes squeezed shut, and his mouth moving on something with no sound. The melody, she realized. He was singing the melody to himself with no breath behind it, and she took the ramp, cut the wheel onto the long uphill bed of gravel, and the truck plowed into it, and the world stood on its front edge, and everything not tied down flew forward, and the gravel dragged them down, and down, and down, and stopped. Steam, ticking metal, the gravel settling under the tires with a long sigh, somebody breathing hard, and it was her. "Everybody talk to me," Imani said. "Here," from the sleeper, rough. "Here," said the boy, and then he started to shake, and she got her arm around him, and held the back of his head, and let him shake against her shoulder, and she hummed the 6 notes and the 7th, out loud, so he'd have the whole thing to hold, and over the top of his head, her eyes met Kangjun's in the mirror, and neither of them said what they both already knew. Trucks don't lose their brakes at the bottom of a hill, they lose them at the top, where somebody set it to happen. Danny's shop was 40 minutes down the far side once they'd limped there on the gears, a low cinder-block garage off a frontage road with a hand-painted sign and one bay light burning. Imani's brother came out wiping his hands before the truck had fully stopped, and he took one look at his sister's face through the windshield and stopped wiping. She got out. She held on to him a second longer than she meant to. Then she stepped back and told him, flat, "I lost the service brakes on the eastbound grade, full fade. I want to know why before I say another word to anybody." Danny didn't ask about the Korean man climbing down from her sleeper, or the boy who wouldn't let go of her jacket. He grabbed a light and rolled under the truck, and the yard went quiet except for the tick of cooling steel and the scrape of his creeper on the concrete. He was under there a long time. When he came out, he wasn't wiping his hands anymore. He was holding something in them. Careful, the way you hold something you want other people to see exactly as you found it. A section of line. He laid it on the fender under the bay light. "Come look," he said, and his voice was wrong. Imani looked. Kangjun looked. Danny put one blunt finger next to the fitting. "A brake line doesn't fail like this," Danny said. "A line that wears out. It weeps. It goes soft over weeks. It warns you. This didn't warn you." He turned it in the light. This was cut most of the way through and left to blow the first time the system got hot and pressured up. Hard grade, loaded truck. First real hill. Somebody who knew exactly what a mountain does to a set of brakes did this, and they did it recent. This cut is clean. This cut is a day old, maybe less. "A day," Imani said. "A day." She did the arithmetic, and it turned her cold. A day ago, the truck had sat on a dock at a terminal west of Denver, in a bay with a green light, unwatched for 40 minutes while she drank $2 coffee, and the whole world came apart in a break room. Kang Jun had gone the color of the concrete. He was looking at the cut line, and Imani watched him arrive where she'd already arrived, and go one step past it into a place she couldn't follow. "It was cut at my terminal," he said, "on my property, by my people, while the truck sat under my cameras." He straightened. This was never about taking my son back from a stranger on the road. He looked at the boy holding Imani's jacket, at the small circle of scar on the boy's forearm, at the red cord and the steel nut. "Someone in my own house," Kang Jun said, and each word came out separately, "wants my son dead." The bay light hummed. Danny set the ruined line down on the fender, gently, like it was evidence, because it was. Ji-ho had come to stand beside Imani, without anyone seeing him move. He looked at the cut line on the fender, and then up at his father, and for the first time all day he was the one who spoke into the silence. "He'll come again," the boy said. "He doesn't stop. He waits, and he tries again, and he's patient about it." He looked at the ruined brake line, the way another child might look at a photograph of a face. You have to stop making it a fight he can lose from far away. Kang Jun crouched down to the boy's level, slow, keeping his scarred hand where his son could see it. "Then we bring him close," he said. "Then he's gonna have to come through me," Imani said. "And I don't fade." Danny didn't answer her. He was still holding the length of brake line, turning it under the shop light, and his jaw had gone wrong. Not angry, slack. The way a man's face goes when the ground he's standing on stops being ground. "Danny," Imani stepped closer. "You heard me. He comes through me." "Where'd you say you docked?" Danny didn't look up. "The terminal." "Where?" "West of Denver. CO Group." "Why?" He set the line down on the bench. Careful. Both hands, like it could break, though it was already broken. Then he crossed the garage to the far wall, to the metal cabinet he kept locked, and he worked the padlock with a key off his belt, and his hands weren't steady doing it. Kang Jun watched him from the open bay door. Ji-ho stood at Imani's hip, close, the steel nut between his fingers turning slow. Danny came back with a box, cardboard, soft at the corners, water-stained. He set it on the bench next to the cut line, and he opened the flaps and he took out a plastic bag, the kind evidence goes in, sealed with a red tie. Inside, it was a piece of steel tube, rusted at one end, clean cut at the other. 4 years ago, Danny said, his voice came out flat. State trooper called Imani, told her Marcus went off the grade outside Trinidad. Brakes. They said brakes. They ruled it where. "Danny, don't." Imani's hand found the counter. "I pulled this off his rig at the yard before they scrapped it." He held the bag up to the light beside the fresh line. "I kept it because it never sat right with me. A line don't wear clean. It frays. It weeps. It warns you for weeks." He set the old piece down next to the new one, side by side. "Tell me what you see." Imani looked. She didn't want to. She looked anyway. Same cut, same angle, same clean 3/4 through, and the last quarter left to blow on the first hot grade. 2 pieces of steel, 4 years apart, and one hand behind both of them. The shop went quiet, except for the tick of the cooling truck. "No," Imani said, soft, not a word so much as a thing that fell out of her. Kang Jun crossed the floor. He picked up the old piece in the bag, held it to the new one, and Imani watched his face do the same thing Danny's had done. She watched the iron hand look at a rusted tube of steel and lose the color under his eyes. "This is the same work," Kang Jun said, quiet. "Same hand, same signature." He set it down. "Who was your husband?" "He drove." Imani's voice had gone thin. "Long haul, same as me. He drove other people's freight up and down this country for 18 years, and he never once." She stopped. She put her knuckles to her mouth. "He wasn't in anything. He wasn't anybody's enemy. He hauled boxes." "Where?" Kang Jun's eyes had narrowed, not at her, past her, At something 4 years back, the last run. Where was he coming from? Danny answered, because Imani couldn't. West Coast Port, Long Beach. He picked up a container box, sealed, going east. Denver drop. He swallowed. He never made the drop. He went off the grade the night before. What was in the box? Nobody ever said. Insurance called it a total loss. Cargo undeclared. Danny's hands had made fists. They closed it in a week. Kangjun turned away from them. He walked 3 steps and stopped and stood with his back to the bay, one hand flat on the workbench, the scar in his palm pressed to the steel. He was very still. Imani had learned, in one day, that this was the stillness that came before he moved something heavy. 6 years ago, my son was taken, he said, to the wall. 2 years, he was gone, before your husband died. He turned around. Jiho, come here, look at me. The boy didn't move from Imani's side. She felt his fingers tighten on her sleeve. Kangjun crossed to them and lowered himself down, not reaching, just down, to the boy's level, both knees, the way Imani had seen him do it in the shop already, learning the only way in was under the boy's eyeline. The room without a window, Kangjun said. Gentle, and it cost him to be gentle, she could hear it. Before Imani found you, before the road, was it always the same room? Jiho stared at his father's hands. No, the boy said. How many? 3. The nut turned. The last one had a truck. Imani's stomach dropped. What do you mean, a truck? Jiho didn't look up at her. He looked at nothing, the way he did when the numbers came, when the road facts came, when the armor came up around him, and he counted his way behind it. There was a man who drove, a big man, not like the others. He wasn't, the boy's mouth worked. He wasn't one of them. He gave me his food. He had a red hat. The garage stopped. Imani heard her own breath go out of her and not come back. She was aware of the corner of the sleeper cab, up in the truck, the shelf over the bunk, the faded red cap that wasn't Eli's, that had never been Eli's, that she'd carried 3 years and 4 years, and never once let herself throw away. A red hat, she said. Her voice wasn't hers. Baby, say it again. A red hat, Jiho said. Old, the letters were coming off. He wore it backwards when he checked the straps. The boy's fingers had gone still on the nut for the first time all day. He found me in the box, in the dark. He opened it at a rest place, and there was a boy in the box, and it was me. He wasn't supposed to. He said. Jiho's face crumpled, slow, like something folding under weight. He said he was going to get me home. He kept saying it, home. He didn't know the word right. He said it funny, but he kept saying it. Imani had gone down onto the bench without deciding to. Her legs had just stopped. He gave me a song. The boy's voice had dropped to almost nothing, so I'd stop crying in the dark. He didn't know the words. He only knew the sound of it. He'd hum it. 6 notes and 1 more. Jiho hummed it then. The melody, the same 6 and the 7th. And it came out of the boy in Danny's garage, the way it had come out of a video screen in a break room a day ago, the way it had come out of Imani's own mouth in a motel outside Topeka 11 months ago, and Kangjun made a sound she'd never heard a man like him make. That was his wife's, Kangjun said, barely. That was her lullaby. She sang it to him in the hospital. 11 seconds he didn't cry, and then she sang, and he cried. He was looking at the boy, and his eyes were wet, and he didn't wipe them. How did your husband? He heard it from me, Jiho said simply. I sang it in the box. It was the only thing I had of her. I didn't have her face anymore. I only had the song, and the man in the red hat learned it off me so he could give it back to me when I was scared. The boy finally looked up, not at his father, at Imani, and then he was gone. There was a night, and there was noise, and the truck went sideways, and men came, and they put me back. And the man in the red hat wasn't there anymore. Imani couldn't speak. There wasn't a shape in her chest that would let a word past it. "Tell me about him," she heard herself say. Not the reveal, not the truck, not the box, not the men. Him, the man in the red hat. What else? Jiho thought. The nut turned once. "He had a picture in the cab," the boy said. "A woman, on the dash. Dark like you." He'd point at her, and then point at me, and hold up 2 fingers. Like we were the same. Like she was somewhere, and I was somewhere, and both of us were waiting for him. Jiho's throat moved. He said her name a lot. I couldn't say it back right. He'd laugh when I tried. "Imani," Danny said, low, from the bench. "He was showing you, Imani." The boy nodded, slow, like the name had gone somewhere and locked. "He said, when he got me home, there'd be a house, and a woman who cooked too much, and a bed that didn't move. He said the bed not moving was the best part." I didn't believe him. I'd never had a bed that didn't move. He looked at Imani. "You have a bed that doesn't move?" "I did." Her voice broke on it. "I had a house. I sold it after. I couldn't sleep in a room that didn't move either. Baby, that's..." She pressed the ring to her mouth. "That's why I drive." Something passed between them then, the boy and the woman, that neither said out loud. That the same dead man had been driving both of them home for 4 years, from opposite ends of the same dark road, and had only managed to make them meet from the grave. Kangjun had turned his face away. His shoulders, the wide shoulders she'd watched hold a whole terminal in line with a nod, had gone down an inch. When he spoke, it was to the floor. "I spent 6 years building an empire to buy back one boy," he said. "Every dollar, every man, every favor I called in. I could move a container across an ocean in a day. I couldn't find my own son." He turned, and a truck driver with a red hat, and no money, and no army, found him in the dark, and gave him a bed that didn't move. He looked at Imani, and there was no iron in it. "Your husband did in one night what I couldn't do in 6 years. And I never even knew his name to thank him." "Marcus," Imani said. His name was Marcus Brooks. Kangjun said it back. Careful, the way the boy had said his mother's name, getting the shape of it right. "Marcus Brooks." He nodded once, like closing something. "I'll say it where it matters. When this is done, out loud, I'll make them say it too." Imani couldn't speak. The grief she'd buried 4 years ago, and the boy she'd found 11 months ago, had just become the same grief, the same boy, the same road, and she sat back down under the weight of it. Marcus. Marcus hauling a sealed box east out of Long Beach, not knowing, opening it at a rest stop for a reason nobody would ever know, a noise, a smell, a feeling, and finding a boy folded in the dark. Marcus, who didn't have a mean bone, who couldn't leave a stray dog on a shoulder, who'd have looked at a starved child and done the only thing his whole body knew how to do. Try to get him home. Learn the boy's one song so the boy would stop shaking. Try to report it, maybe. Try to do it right. And somebody with a clean saw and a patient hand had made sure Marcus went off the Trinidad grade before he could open his mouth. And before the truck went, before the men came, Marcus had put the boy out, on the road, in the dark, alone, because a boy on a shoulder was a boy with a chance, and a boy in a box was already dead. Marcus had freed him, and it had cost Marcus everything. And it had bought the boy 3 more years of rooms before he walked out of one final door and down a Kansas shoulder 11 months ago, and stepped into a pair of headlights that belonged to the widow of the man who'd tried to save him first. The melody wasn't hers. It had never been hers. Marcus had carried it home in his own throat from a rest stop in the dark, and he'd hummed it in their kitchen without knowing what it was or whose it was, hummed it changing the oil, hummed it the last morning she saw him alive, and it had lodged in her the way a song does when you love the man singing it. And when a barefoot boy shook in a motel bed and nothing else worked, it had come up out of her, and she'd thought, God help her, she'd thought, that she invented it. I didn't invent it, Imani said. To no one. To the floor. Marcus gave it to me. He gave it to me and I didn't know. She pressed her hand flat against her chest, against the chain, against the gold ring under her shirt. He brought your song home in his mouth, and I've been singing it back to your son for 11 months, and I didn't know I was doing it. Kang Jun rose, slow, like a man standing up under a full load. He looked at Imani on the bench, and at the 2 pieces of cut steel, and at his son, and something in his face had turned to iron again, but a different iron than the kind he'd walked in with. Colder, older. Your husband found my son, he said, and a man in my family killed him for it. Nobody argued. There was nothing to argue. Danny stood at the bench with both hands braced on it and his head down. Ji-ho had gone quiet, the whole story out of him now, emptied, one hand back on the steel nut, turning. Imani sat with the ring in her fist. Then she stood up. She didn't feel her legs do it, the same as she hadn't felt them go, but she was up, and her voice came back, and it came back low. 4 years. She looked at Kang Jun. 4 years. I told myself the road took him. A wet grade. Bad luck. Worn steel. I made peace with worn steel. You understand me? I buried my husband, and I made peace with a random, cruel accident, because the other thing was too big to carry. Her voice didn't rise. That was the thing about it. It didn't rise at all, and it was never an accident. A man cut his line the same as he cut mine, the same hand, and that man is somebody you eat dinner with. Yes. Kang Jun didn't look away. He is. Say his name. Kang Jun was quiet a moment. I have a guess. He looked at the onyx ring memory sitting between them, unspoken, the reversion branch, the 11 signets, the room where a man laid his hand flat and told a boy that family was the only thing that came for you. I've had a guess since the ring. I want to be wrong. You're not wrong. Imani's jaw was set. Men like that don't get cut in half. You know it. You knew it in the shop. You just didn't have my husband's name to put next to it yet. Outside, gravel crunched. Once. A tire. Slow. On the frontage road. And then gone. And then nothing. But all 4 of them had heard it, and Danny moved to the bay door and looked out and came back and shook his head. Nobody. A truck passing. But the boy had gone rigid, the nut stopped, his eyes up on the door. He's still looking, Ji-ho said. Small. You know that. He doesn't stop. He tried the truck, and it didn't work, and now he knows a lot more than he knew yesterday. The boy's voice shook, but the words came steady. The road facts, the armor. He knows my father found me. He knows I talked. He can't let me stay talking. Kang Jun crossed to his son, and this time the boy let him close, and the man put his scarred hand on the back of the boy's neck. Careful. The way you'd hold something you'd already lost once. He won't get near you, Kang Jun said. He got near your wife. Ji-ho didn't say it cruel. He said it like a number. He got near the man in the red hat. He's family. Family gets near. The boy looked up at his father, and there was something breaking open behind his eyes that had been closed a long time. You didn't find me. For 6 years you didn't find me, and he did. He knew where I was the whole time. Didn't he? Somebody in your own house knew and you didn't. Kang Jun's hand stayed on his neck, but Imani saw the words land, saw them go all the way in, saw the iron hand take the one blow there was no armor for. Yes, Kang Jun said, because he wouldn't lie to the boy. She could see that much in him now. He would not lie to the boy, even to save himself. Someone in my house knew, and I didn't. That's mine to carry, and I'll carry it. But right now, I need you somewhere he can't reach, and I need it tonight. No, The word came out of Imani before she'd chosen it. Then quieter, because the boy had flinched. Not a plan I'm not in, not this time. Last time a man got put somewhere safe, he ended up in a container going east. She came off the bench and stood between them, without meaning to. The old position, the plant, the wall. Wherever he goes, I go. That's not a request. Kangjun looked at her a long moment. At the woman who'd stood in front of his convoy with a pipe wrench. Who'd driven a dead break grade with his son singing in the cab. Who'd carried a red cap and a dead man's song for 4 years and just found out both belonged to the boy at her hip. I know it isn't, he said. He reached into his coat, folded over the chair, sleeves rolled, road mode, and took out his phone, and he stood there with it in his hand, not dialing, looking at the screen, the way a man looks at a door he doesn't want to open. There's one person who's had access to every manifest, every route, every container. This family has moved for 11 years, Kangjun said. One person who'd know a widow's rig docked at my terminal before I did. One person whose branch inherits everything if my son and I are in the ground. He turned the phone in his hand. I've been telling myself all day it can't be him, because if it's him, then I handed my son to the man who took him, twice, once as a baby, and once, his voice caught, once when I called ahead this morning and told my own office I was bringing the boy home. The garage went cold. Imani felt it move through her like water. What did you say? This morning. What exactly did you tell your office? Kangjun looked at her, and for the first time since she'd stood in front of his headlights, the iron hand looked afraid. I told them I'd found him, he said. I told them we were coming in. The words sat in the garage air, and nobody rushed to fill them. Imani watched Kangjun's jaw work once, the way a man's face moves when he's already counting the cost of a thing he can't take back. Danny wiped his hands on the rag at his shoulder and didn't finish the motion. Who did you tell? Imani said, flat, the way she'd said prove it. My office manager. She routes everything. Kangjun set the phone face down on the workbench, gently, like it might go off. By now, it has moved. It always moves. Moves to who? He looked at her, and for the first time, she saw the shape of the thing he'd been carrying without a name. He said it then. Quiet, the way you set down something heavy so it won't crack the floor. Min-jae. Jiho's head came up. The boy had been folded into himself by the tool cart, thumb turning the steel nut on the red cord. At the name, his hand stopped. Not a flinch. Stillness. The kind that costs more than a flinch. His eyes went somewhere neither of them could follow, and when they came back, they were wet and flat at once. The man with the ring, Jiho said. Kangjun crossed the concrete slow, aware of every step, and lowered himself onto one knee at the boy's level. My cousin. My father's brother's son. His hand with the scar opened on his own knee, palm up, showing it. He ran the numbers for the family. 11 years. Every route. Every container. He knew where every truck slept. You never suspected him, Imani said. Not a question. A woman checking a wire she already knew was cut. He grieved loudest when the boy vanished. Kangjun's mouth went flat. He organized the searches. He hired the men who looked in the wrong cities. I sat in a room and watched him weep, and I thought, here is one man in my family who feels it the way I feel it. He looked at the concrete. He was weeping because he'd lost track of where the boy had been moved, not because the boy was gone, because the boy had slipped his own hand. He put his hand on the table, Jiho said, like this. The boy laid his own hand flat on the tool cart, fingers spread, and the gesture was so exact, so learned, that Danny turned his face away toward the bay door. He said family comes for you. He said it slow so I'd remember. Imani felt the floor tilt 1 degree. She'd seen the ring in the photo, seen the boy name it by the hand and not the face, but hearing the name attached to a man who ate at the same table as the father, who had walked the boy's whole missing life like a hallway he owned, that was different. That put a face on 4 years of thinking her husband died of worn steel. "Where is he now?" she said. "Denver. My office." Or he was. Kang Jun stood. The road shirt sleeves were still rolled from the drive, and the imugi at his neck moved when the muscle underneath moved. "He knows I found the boy. He knows I said we were coming in. He will not wait for me to walk through my own front door and find him smiling." "Then we don't go to the door," Imani said. Danny had gone quiet by the workbench, and now he spoke without turning around. "Mani," he was looking at his phone. He'd picked it up off the bench sometime in the last minute, and the light of the screen washed his face pale under the shop bulbs. "You need to see this." Nobody moved to him fast. That was the thing about the garage that morning. Everyone had learned, in the last day, that fast was how you missed the wire under the truck. Imani crossed the floor and took the phone from her brother's hand. A news site, local Denver affiliate, the kind with a weather graphic in the corner and a comment count already climbing. The headline had her stomach before her eyes finished the line. "Woman traveling with missing Korean teen. Authorities seek public help." And under it, a still. Her truck. Her plate, blurred but readable to anyone who wanted to read it. And a second image, smaller, a school photo of a boy who wasn't Ji-ho but close enough. Same age, same dark hair over the eyes, the way these stories always found a face that would do. "Read it out loud," Kang Jun said. She read the parts that mattered. A tip to a Denver station, a trucker, unnamed, seen with a boy who fit the description of a minor reported through channels the article was careful not to specify. A quote from a source close to the family. The family? Expressing concern the child was being used, exploited, that word, laid down clean in the middle of a paragraph. A woman moving a boy across state lines. No school, no home, living in a cab. Imani had spent the morning learning that her husband was murdered. She'd spent 11 months learning to sleep with one ear open for a boy who screamed at helicopters. And here was a paragraph turning all of it inside out, handing the public a version where she was the wire under the truck. She scrolled. The comment count had climbed while she stood there. Strangers she'd never meet were already deciding what kind of woman drives a boy across 3 states with no home to put him in. A few of them had guessed her color from the plate photo and the word trucker, and had opinions about that too. She stopped reading. She'd read enough intake forms and enough denial letters to know the difference between a question and a verdict dressed as a question. "He's fast," Danny said. "Low. That's not a leak. That's a press kit. It's the story he built to have ready," Kang Jun said, "in case the boy ever surfaced. A trafficked child, recovered, becomes an exploited child, taken. The woman who found him becomes the woman who has him. He does not need it to be true. He needs it loud." Imani handed the phone back to her brother. Her hands were steady. She made them steady. "Loud does what?" "Loud puts a description on every police radio between here and the coast." Kang Jun's voice stayed level, but something under it had gone cold and moving, like water under ice. "Loud means the next way station that sees your plate calls it in. Loud means when he comes for the boy, and he will come, there is already a story that says the boy was Ji-ho stood up. He did it without asking the room, which he never did, and the 3 adults felt the shift of it. He walked to Imani and stopped close, closer than the boy who used to flinch at a hand near his face. He looked up at her with those flat, wet eyes. "He'll say you stole me," Ji-ho said. "That's what he does. He makes the true thing sound like the lie." The nut turned once on the cord. "He said it about the truckman too. He said the truckman took me. He said it to the men so they'd bring me back." The garage held very still. The truck man, Imani said. Careful. She knew who the truck man was now. She'd known for an hour, but the boy had never said this part. He found me, and he was going to take me home. Jiho's voice didn't break. It was worse that it didn't. And the man with the ring told everyone he was a thief. So when the truck went off the road, nobody looked. A thief died. That's all it was. He turned the nut. He'll do it to you the same way. Nobody corrected him. Nobody softened it. Imani had made a rule in 11 months, and she kept it now. She did not tell the boy the world was gentler than he knew it to be, because he had counted the exits of that world with his own hands, and she would not call him a liar to make herself feel kind. Kang Jun's face had changed while the boy spoke. Whatever a man looks like when his son explains, plainly, how a good man was murdered and slandered in the same stroke, Kang Jun looked like that. He put his scarred hand out, slow, and rested it on the back of the boy's neck. Jiho let it stay. I'm taking him somewhere he can't be reached, Kang Jun said. Not to Imani, to the room, to himself, to the story on the phone. Not the terminal, not Denver, a house north, off the family's paper. My name is on nothing there. He cannot follow money that isn't there to follow. Imani had known this was coming, from the second she read the word exploited. She'd known it the way you know weather off the smell of the air, and she'd already decided. No, she said. Kang Jun turned. The last time a man put someone safe somewhere off the paper, Imani said, he ended up in a container going east. She held his eyes and did not blink. Your cousin found that box. Your cousin found the truck man off the paper. You think a house he doesn't own is a place he can't find? He found a 14-year-old on the floor of a sealed container. He'll find a house. It's a day, too. Kang Jun's voice tightened 1 degree. Long enough to put men I trust between him and the boy. You don't have men you trust. She said it without cruelty, which was the only way it could land. You had 11 years of trust, and one of them walked your son through every room he owns. You bring your army, you bring his eyes with it. You already know this. You said it in the shop. She stepped closer. The only thing he hasn't planned for is a truck he can't see and a woman who isn't part of your house. You are on the news, Kang Jun said. Then I'm exactly where he wants his story to be. Imani's chin came up. And nowhere near where I actually am. For a moment, neither gave. Two people who'd spent their lives being the one who decided, standing a foot apart in a block garage, each waiting for the other to be the one who blinked. It was Jiho who broke it. I want to stay with her. He said it to his father. That was the thing that turned Kang Jun's head. Not the volume, there wasn't any. The direction. The boy had spent the day letting the man's hand rest on his neck, letting the man kneel to his level, and now he stood between them, and chose, out loud, in front of the father, the woman. Jiho, Kang Jun crouched again, and now his voice was the softest Imani had heard it, Koreano bleeding into the edges of it, the way a man's first language comes back when the second one runs out. Appa is trying to keep you alive. Appa wasn't there, Jiho said. It wasn't an accusation the way a shout is an accusation. It was worse. It was a fact, set down flat on the tool cart next to the man's own hand. Appa wasn't there. 6 years, a hallway with the boy's name on it, and the man's cousin walking it. Kang Jun took it without moving, and Imani watched the cost of it cross his face and settle into the lines already there. No, Kang Jun said. I wasn't. He stood. He looked at the boy a long moment, then at Imani, and something in the geometry of the room rearranged itself. The wall she'd built at the clinic, supervised, here, a fence. She felt it turn under her again, the way it had turned then, and she didn't fight it. Both, Kang Jun said. You keep the truck. I ride in the sleeper. He rides front, in your reach. the way you said it. But the boy does not sleep in a place I can drive away from. He looked at Jiho. I will not be the man who wasn't there. Not again. Not for one night. Imani weighed it. It cost him to say. She could see that, and she'd learned by now that what a man like this gave up told her more than what he took. Sleeper's cargo, she said. You don't call the route. You don't touch the radio unless I hand it to you. And when I say hold, you hold. Like the diner. Like the diner. Danny cleared his throat. He'd been standing at the workbench through all of it, mechanic's rag still on his shoulder, and now he was looking at his phone again, with a face Imani didn't like. Before anybody drives anywhere, he turned the screen to them. Not the news this time. A message, a number with no name attached. This came while y'all were talking. Kangjun took the phone. Read it once. His hand did not tighten, and the fact that it did not tighten told Imani everything about what it cost him to keep it loose. Read it, she said. He set the phone down on the bench so all of them could see the screen at once. 5 words, and a photo under them. The 5 words were plain English, no accent to hear, because there was nothing to hear, just letters on glass. Bring me the truck, alone. The photo under it was the garage. Not this garage, not from inside, from the frontage road, through the open bay door, taken maybe 2 minutes ago. The angle of it, the light, the shape of Imani's own shoulder at the edge of the frame. Somebody had been on the frontage road with a phone. Somebody had heard a tire in the gravel an hour ago, the tire Danny went out to check and found nothing, and the nothing had been somebody backing off just far enough to become nobody. He's already here, Danny said. Jiho had gone the color of the concrete floor. He didn't reach for Imani's sleeve. He'd stopped doing that sometime in the last day, and its absence was its own kind of loud. Instead, he turned the steel nut on the red cord, once, twice, and looked at the bay door like a boy counting an exit. How long has he had the number? Kangjun said, quiet, to Danny. It's my shop line. It's on the sign out front. Danny's jaw was tight. He didn't need to find us. He found the sign and waited for you to drive to it. Imani looked at the photo one more time. Her own shoulder, the edge of it, caught in a frame she never felt taken. 4 years of thinking her husband met the road wrong. 11 months of a boy in her cab. A morning of the truth arriving in one long piece. And now a man she'd never seen had put a camera on her from a road she couldn't see, and asked, in 5 flat words, for the only thing she'd ever refused to give anyone, the wheel, and the boy who counted miles beside it, handed over alone in the dark. She picked the phone up herself this time. She looked at the 5 words. Bring me the truck, alone. He wants the truck, she said, slow, turning it over. Not the boy first, the truck. He wants both, Kangjun said. No. Imani set the phone down. Something had moved behind her eyes. The thing that moved when she smelled a grade going bad before the pedal told her. A man who wants a boy sends men in the dark and takes him quiet. He tried that. It didn't work. I stood in the road with a wrench, and it didn't work. And the brakes didn't work. And now he's asking, out loud, for the truck. She looked at Kangjun, then at Jiho, then at the machine, sitting cold in the bay, with 90,000 pounds of nothing in it. He doesn't want the boy dead anymore. He wants something that's in my truck. The garage went quiet in a new way, not the stillness of grief, the stillness of a room where 4 people have just heard the same wrong note in a song and are all turning toward it at once. Jiho's thumb had stopped on the nut. There's a key, the boy said. Everyone looked at him. In the truck, Jiho's eyes had gone far again, back into a room none of them could see. He put a key in the truck man's truck. Before, he said. The boy's brow drew down, dragging the memory up by the root. He said the truck man was carrying it and didn't know. He was so angry when the truck went off the road, not because the man was. He stopped, turned the nut, started again, flatter. He wasn't angry the man died. He was angry the truck burned. He kept saying, "It's gone, it's on the truck and it's gone." Imani felt the cold come up through the soles of her boots. "It didn't burn," Danny said slowly. He was looking at his sister now, and the same thing was arriving in both of them at the same speed. "The rig burned, the cab, but you kept the—" "He wasn't angry the man died," Jiho said again, softer, like the sentence had a splinter in it he couldn't stop touching. "I remember his voice on the phone. He said the word, gone. Over and over. I thought he meant the truck man. He meant a thing. All that time he meant a thing." Imani crouched. Not close enough to crowd him. Close enough that the boy could reach her if he decided to, and she left the choosing to him the way she'd learned to. "You did right telling us," she said. "Every piece of it. You hear me?" Jiho turned the nut on the cord and gave the smallest nod she'd ever counted as one. "I kept his run box," Imani said. Her voice had gone very quiet. The smooth, low quiet of a woman who has just understood that the thing she'd been hauling for 4 years, the thing she'd never opened, because opening it meant admitting he was gone, might be the reason a man was standing on a frontage road with a camera in his hand. "The tin," she said. "Marcus's tin, under the passenger seat. I never—" She looked at the truck in the bay, at the boy, at the man with the dragon on his neck. "I never opened it. It's been under that seat for 4 years." Kungjun turned toward the machine. Danny moved first, toward the bay door, and Imani caught his arm without looking. "Not yet," she said. "You go out there. He learns which one of us runs at a sound." Danny stopped. The rag slid off his shoulder to the floor, and none of them picked it up. Kungjun was already at the truck, hand on the passenger door, and he looked back at her once. Not for permission, she understood, but to move at her speed instead of his own. She gave him the smallest nod, the same one she'd just spent on the boy. Outside, on the frontage road, a car door closed. Not loud, just enough. The sound of a man who no longer needed to be quiet, because he'd already made sure the woman knew he was there. If this story moved you, stop for a moment and reflect. Have you ever raised a child the world said wasn't yours to keep, my loves? Have you ever planted yourself in a doorway, unarmed, and dared power to walk through you? When the truth about someone you lost finally surfaced, did it heal you or break you open again? Tell me, my loves. Mark my words. Love proven on the road runs deeper than any name written on paper. Tell us your experiences and feelings in the comments. We read them all. And if you believe in stories about motherhood, sacrifice, and redemption, leave a like, be sure to subscribe to the channel, and click join to become a part of our community and help the channel.